Our speaker is Larry Watson. Larry has been a member of Triangle Toastmasters since November of 2012. He is working on the presentation mastery path. He will be giving a speech from that path for level 4. So the speech is, this speech is a condensed version of a presentation at the Kentucky Society of Human Resource Managers conference in October. Today's world is changing all the time, especially in the workplace. Corporate conscious is developing quickly, and we need to be ready to lead and create an environment that includes everybody. Larry will guide you on the pathway to greater understanding to be part of the solution. Larry's time is 18 to 22 minutes. Let's welcome Larry Watson. We've got some work to do to building corporate consciousness. We've got some work to do building corporate consciousness. Larry Watson.
It was a beautiful summer day. It was the year that I had graduated from college. And I was heading out of town to go camping. Not glamping, Brian, but camping, including 2 canines in the back seat of my car. I stopped at the gas station in my neighborhood in Cincinnati to fill up the tank before we hit the road. And as I was filling the tank, smell that gas coming from the hose, watch the numbers roll. Anybody remember those days? And I heard a voice behind me say, "Give me $5." I thought they were talking to somebody else. I kept going. They said, "Give me $5." And I turned and I said, "I don't think so." They said, "Give me $5. I tell you what, I'll fight you for it. I'll fight you and you give me $5." I was really confused. I said, "No, I don't think so. That's not going to work." Before they turned away, they said, "You know, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Silver spoon, that's what you had." And he's walking away talking about the silver spoon. Did I mention that he was Black? This really pointed out to me now, a few years later, what is going on in our country right now. What is going on in the world? There's an awareness that is rising above what we already know, what we think we know. And today I want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is how a company focuses on creating a space where everyone feels safe and feels like they belong. Myself, I am a professional coach, transformation coach, a consultant to HR departments in the field of DEI. And I really had to look at this, not just as like, this is how I can make the world better. That's important because really the reason I shifted from private practice to corporate practice is because I knew I would be able to reach more people. But I also know that companies are focused on one thing. That's right, money. How does it create the bottom line? Well, it turns out that people that feel safe, people that feel included, people that feel like they belong are more productive and they stick around longer. For those who don't know, in the corporate world, for every person there's a turnover every time an employee is lost or fired. It costs the company between 1 and 2 years of that salary to replace them, to train, etc. So it costs money if we make an environment that isn't friendly. That's why DEI is important. And it's important to any of us who work in a company or want to work in a company. If you want to get into a job, you need to understand what DEI is about, why it's there, and how you can be a positive part of that corporate consciousness. Diversity and inclusion is what they used to call this area. Recently, in the past few months, equity has become a part of that conversation. Now, what does it mean, diversity and inclusion? And that was a real eye-opener for me to hear somebody say diversity is like asking somebody to the dance. Inclusion is asking someone to dance. It's not just saying, okay, there's, you can come in the door. It's saying you're an important part of what we're about. So there's 3 areas that I see that are really important in DE&I. 1 is race, 2 is gender, and 3 is gay and transgender. So these are all areas that require attention and ultimately awareness. So with race, of course, we're seeing a lot of racial justice issues coming up, and we need to know how we can handle that. Now, some books are becoming quite popular. One is by Dr. Robin DiAngelo, which is White Fragility, which is really an important book because we can focus on race as the people of color, people of different cultures. We can focus on that as where the change needs to happen. We can create equality processes like laws and guidelines and rules. But if the white segment of the population isn't able to change its own perspective, it will never change. Because what is the word we're hearing? Systemic racism. And that doesn't mean it's just about police brutality. It's not just the police that are the problem. And the police are a victim of the problem, which is systemic racism, systemic throughout our society. It's inborn in us, almost. We learn it so fast that by the time that we are 3 or 4 years old, a child will pick the doll with the lightest color skin. And the scary thing is, it's true for children who are people of color. That's how systemic it is. This is our society. This is what we created. This is what we continued for 400 years in subtle ways. We see it on TV. That's where those children pick it up. Or do they pick it up from their family? Maybe not. Maybe their family has no idea of what racism would look like in their home. So systemic is the key point here, which means all people have to start becoming aware. So the next area that I wanted to focus on is gender. And this has been a problem, an issue for maybe thousands of years. Though at a certain point in the past, there were many societies that were matriarchal instead of patriarchal. Women were the deciders. And sometimes that was because men knew that they were responsible for babies. And they were also responsible for food once we went from hunter-gatherer to agricultural societies. And the women were the ones who did that, who farmed the land, cooked the food. They were the decision makers. But this is a lot different in the past few hundred years. Rarely does a woman have that power. So we can see that in salary gaps between women and men. So somewhere around 84% of the salary that a man makes for the same job. And there is a real disparity in the number of women who move up the ladder. Because that's a main point about all of this. Yes, we can invite people to dance, but or do the dance, but are we going to help them move up the ladder? Is the distribution, the equity, the diversity going to extend into management, into the boardroom? Because when women have an equal say, equal place at the boardroom, those companies are consistently more profitable by 14% over companies that are strongly weighted towards men. So that's another issue that a lot of companies are really focused on. How do we create, and why not? Because it can be 50% of a workforce. That's a lot of people that if we create an environment that allows them to flourish, where they feel valued, where they are engaged, then they will be that much more productive. They will rise in the ranks. They will be an asset to the company. The third area is the gay and transgender communities. So we hear the LGBT, right? I was at a Christmas party. Party's been going on for 30 years. And yeah, I started when I was 10. We all gather every year in January for Christmas and have this great potluck dinner. You can smell all the food. Oh, it's incredible. And every year we have this white elephant exchange. And there are just some crazy stuff in that white elephant exchange. Well, this past January, I was really surprised that there was a package opened and there was this thing, whatever it was, had the rainbow colors on it. And one of the people in the group, which shocked me, she goes, "There's one of those LGBTQRSTUV things, and you know, I don't know what those all mean." And I just thought, well, she's uncomfortable with all those letters. So this is her way of diffusing her own tension. Another package opened with rainbow colors. There's another one of those LGBTQRSTUV things. And it just made me really aware of how important it is to understand what things mean. What does it mean to be gay? What does it mean to be bisexual? What does it mean to be transgender? What does it mean to be, well, what are the other letters? What do they mean? How can we invite people in if we don't understand who they are? How can we invite them to dance? How can we interact with them if we're always wondering, what is that about? So these are the areas that we have opportunities. I wanted to read something from Robin DiAngelo that kind of points out. She was talking about White fragility is the way that white people avoid the conversation. And how often do we avoid these other conversations? A lot of this is true for any segment of any marginalized segment of our population. So she says the key to moving forward is what we do with our discomfort. Now, I admit that perhaps some of you are uncomfortable with some of this conversation, and that's good. She says we can use it as a door out, blame the messenger and disregard the message, or we can use it as a door in by asking these questions. Why does this unsettle me? What would it mean for me if this were true? How does this lens change my understanding of racial dynamics or gender dynamics or pride dynamics? How can my unease help reveal the unexamined assumptions I have been making? The unexamined assumption of that conversation with that gentleman in the gas station was that everyone had the same opportunity. They don't. Is it possible that because I am white, there are some racial dynamics that I can't see? Duh. Am I willing to consider that possibility? If I am not willing to do so, then why not? Discomfort is a great messenger. There's room to grow. What's going on? Why am I uncomfortable? How can I reach out? So for the corporate consciousness, our role in a corporation is to be part of this DEI. It's not just a segment over here or a committee or an affinity group. It's not just that, it's everybody. Those are the opportunities for every one of us to step in and say, how can I understand more? How can I become more aware of the systemic racism that I am a part of? We don't like to say that. That's the uncomfortable part. I'm a racist. Nobody wants to say that. But it's part of the system. And if we don't see it, we don't get to change it. If we don't see homophobia, we don't get to change it. If we don't see transphobia, we don't get to see it. We don't get to change it. We don't see gender bias. It's never going to change. That's our opportunity, is the awareness. It's how we can change this. And for those who are still in transition, who move in through transition, are you ready for that? Or were you insulated in your old role, your old job, that you didn't even have any kind of awareness of this kind of issue? Or do you want to be able to examine a company based on this to see if they have an HRC workplace equity index that will tell you how they handle this, so that you can feel good about being there? Because if one person doesn't feel safe, nobody gets to feel safe. This is a great opportunity. This is, we say that from chaos comes order. This chaos is one opportunity for an entire society to wake up and say, how are we going to change this? And corporations are on the leading edge of that. And if they're not, they need to call me. So I encourage you to be aware of your own discomfort, Be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware and asking questions. Because we're creating this world. We're creating it by day, in the ways that we question ourselves. It is the questions that we ask ourselves and what we do with the answers that determines the quality of our life. It's a quote from Lynn Schuster Williams, and that sums it up. So I invite you, wherever you are in your corporation or in preparation for your next job, to look into these areas, learn more, find out what is really going on. Mr. Toastmaster.